Hey Wizard, in this video I want to talk about why I'm looking to build a trading application using the Sui blockchain, potentially over using the Solana blockchain. And I wanted to get this out because there's many videos talking about price action and which is the best blockchain or why should we care about this over the other. But none of them are fundamentally talking about from a developer's perspective, and developers are the people who are building the use cases with this technology. So I wanted to sort of give you my own personal, as a rogue developer, my own personal feel and impressions with the tech because I'm starting to get quite excited by it. Now, I'm going to talk about the trading application that I'm looking to build just to give you the context around the problem I'm trying to solve. And then that will help you understand why and where I'm looking in terms of blockchain tech stacks to build my backend for this application that we could all use. So I'm going to go into that in some detail as well. And I want to make it very clear that I'm not incentivized in any way, shape, or form to talk about any of the technologies that I'm mentioning here. This is all based on my own research, looking at solutions that can fit what I think is actually required to make this a reality, because there's a lot of hurdles and these technologies actually carry a lot of weight to them. So the first thing is the trading application. So you'll know by now that I'm a big fan of crypto and trading. Obviously running cryptowizards.net and starting this channel back in 2017, I've always been about trading in the crypto industry. And that's because I believe that blockchain and the blockchain type of technology, etc., solves a problem for trading that we have not yet capitalized on. And I want to change that. So the idea here is to allow folk to trade with binary outcomes in mind. And there are already crypto projects that do this. But I want to do it in a way that I think a trader actually needs it done. And I want to create the ability for us to create our own markets in a way that we can trade based on beliefs and outcomes. And so the idea here is for this to be fully decentralized. So I don't want to do any token launch or whatever surrounding this. We can trade just using native tokens. I don't need any fee going to an account with my personal address on or anything like that. I don't need a financial incentive to build this. And I want to make that very clear because I think in the spirit of peer-to-peer trading and decentralization in general, Bitcoin was created for everyone and is owned by everyone. And so I want this trading application to be the same. I want it to be owned by everyone. So the idea is to build the backend on either Solana or the Sui blockchain, probably the Sui blockchain, and to put the front end, which will just be a file people can download, on Arweave, because it will live there forever. No one can take it down. No one owns it. Everyone owns it. It's on the blockchain. And so the idea is that a user, a trader, could simply download this HTML/JavaScript package and just run it in their browser. And you probably didn't know this if you're not a web developer, but you can just take a JavaScript or HTML file that someone created, if not yourself, and drag and drop it into your browser and your browser will run it, right? So you don't need to go to whatever name.com, etc. And the idea for doing that simply came from, I don't want a website that people can DDoS or whatever. It's then not decentralized, right? It's not then a decentralized solution. The idea here is to have something that can't be attacked by anyone maliciously. It can be owned by everyone and used by everyone. So that's the first thing, right? The application would get downloaded, put into the browser. And now let's say Bob, he's a user of this application, right? So Bob, my friend Bob here, he's a trader. And Bob says, I'm looking at the price of Solana and I want to bet that Solana's price will be whatever it is plus 1%, 5 minutes from the start of the contract. So this is a way to trade options with binary outcomes, which, by the way, I hate doing in the real world because the odds are completely against you. You'll lose all your money. But in crypto, I actually think this will be the safest way to trade. And it also takes away the need to use stop losses, etc. And you're going to see sort of how I've tried to evolve this idea using blockchain to allow us to do things that we can't do in existing applications. So the idea here is Bob says, okay, I want to bet that Solana to USDT will be at 5 minutes past 10, because the expiration here is 5 minutes. It could be an hourly contract, could be daily. Here I'm using the example of 5 minutes. Will be higher than whatever its price is at 10 a.m. plus 1%. Or he could just say higher than the price at 10 a.m., which most people would do. But I want to give an advanced example here so that everybody can see the scope of this. So Bob says, okay, I want to bet that. So he goes and makes an order. Now, using the Sui blockchain, this is probably going to cost him like a fraction of a cent. Like it's not even going to really register the cost of doing that. So that order then hits the order book over here. Now, if Bob was to spoof the market, so put in orders, etc., then try to cancel them, etc., which he could go and do. He could go and buy himself out of this order, right? He could go and be his own market taker, because here he was the market maker. He could go in here and take his order back out. But if he's doing that, because it is run on the blockchain, there is a small fee, right? Even though it's a fraction of a cent, he is going to then start eating into his trading capital. So he's not really incentivized to spoof the market very much, right? He's actually disincentivized to do that, which is interesting in itself. But he could still do it. I mean, materially, it's not going to cost him much. He could still spoof the market if he wanted to. But the point is, this market is now, this option here is now being made available to the public, right? Anyone can see this and take this order from Bob, including himself. He could take it and cancel it and own it himself, or someone else could take it from him. And there are other orders. You know, another person, maybe Jim, for example, or Sarah or Jane. You know, they put a bet here that the price would be up 5 minutes past 10 from the current price of Solana at 10 a.m., right? Rather than the plus 1%. Bob said plus 1%. So what he's asked for is he's asked for a payout of 3.0, meaning his original 1 sol that he bets, or 1 whatever token, plus 3.0. Plus 2 more sol. So he's going to make 2 sol in profit if he's right, and he'll lose 1 if he's wrong. And the reason why it's a higher payout is because the odds are strongly against him. The probability is strongly against him that the price will move within 1% in 5 minutes, right? If he had just bet the price at, he would have just had a payout of 2.0, meaning he'd get his original 1 sol plus 1 other sol if someone took that trade, right? So that's how decimal odds work. If you worked 1 divided by 3 plus 1 divided by 1.5, those two would add up to 1, right? And so that's how decimal odds are working here. So someone else is saying, right, 2.0, you know, for a 50-50 probability, basically. And you could go and say, take that market there. Or someone else says, no, I think the price will go down 50-50 based on that current price. I want to take that market. And there'd just be a whole list based on the orders that people are pushing out there. And then here's this publicly available open order book that everyone can see and anyone can execute on. So let's say Alice comes along and Alice sees this, and just in the nick of time, just before 10 a.m., Alice sees, okay, the price now of Solana, for example, to USDT is 38.75. And she says, okay, you know, even though as a taker, my payout's only going to be 1.5, meaning if I bet, you know, 2 sol, I'm only going to get 2 sol back, my original capital, plus half a sol, right? That's plus 1 sol. So she's going to have 3 sol coming back, including her 2 that she staked, essentially, that she bet or wagered here. If Bob's right, Bob will get his original, you know, 1 sol over here, plus the 2 that Alice has put in. So he will get his payout of 3.0, which he's the maker, 3.0 here, right? But Alice knows. Alice is like the probability, because the probability times the payout is how a savvy trader would work. What's the probability times the payout? Never mind the payout being low. Like, has this other trader got their statistics wrong? Because I'm going to capitalize on that. So Alice is coming along and saying, okay, I will take that trade. All right, I will bet you. Now, Bob's thinking, okay, you know, there's an announcement coming out. I don't think other traders are aware of the impact that's going to have. So he does have his reasons. He could be right. But Alice says, no, I'll take that trade. So she goes and clicks take. If she wanted to create her own order, she would just click on this, create her own order, right? That's the idea. Now, fast forward in time. We're now at 2 minutes past 10. And Bob and Alice are in this order over here, right? So we're now in play. And this would be similar to like football betting or basketball betting, sports betting, where you can bet on odds before a game, but you can also trade the odds during the game. And the odds in this application are completely set by the market. That's the idea, right? Completely set by the market, just like in the real world where traders are setting their prices on the order book in that sense. Now, Bob sees that the price has gone down. It's moved against him. And the announcements happened and it didn't end up playing out the way he expected. So he's feeling kind of nervous. He's like, shoot, I'm going to lose my Solana. But the time isn't up yet. So there's still some value in Bob's contract. So he says, okay, I will allow somebody to buy out my stake in this contract and pay me half of what I staked. So he staked, his 1 Solana over here to win back that 1 plus 2 in profit. He's saying somebody else can pay half a Solana and own his contract. So he's prepared to sell his contract at a loss, right? And so he does that. He goes and puts that out there. And so what that means is someone else seeing this contract would see this buyout button, except it would be up here, and they could click buyout and literally own his contract. Now, Alice sees the price has gone down, but she's actually in profit because the price has gone in the way she predicted, and which is lower than the price plus 1%, which is what Bob set that level at. And so Alice is she's pretty happy. And so she says, no, I'm happy. I don't need to sell my contract. I don't need to exit out early. I don't need to offer it. She doesn't enter in any buyout options for any other trader. She's like, I'm all good. One possibility in this, talking it out loud here, is you could even have it that other traders can see a contract and offer money on it. Like, could you imagine? This is all possible, right, with this blockchain. I will offer you money for your contract. I can see it on the blockchain. I will pay you for it. But nonetheless, like Alice is like, cool, I'm sitting pretty. I want to keep my contract, all good. Now, irrespective of what happens at 10:05, Bob might have got out of his contract or won his contract. Alice might have lost or won. The price might have moved against them. Is kind of irrelevant. The idea here is that we're letting traders own their contracts around trading, but directly own them and make it very visible as to what's actually going on. So allow them to trade amongst each other, both before the fact and during the fact, right? During the game. So essentially what we're doing here is we are gamifying trading, but the odds payout is virtually 100% in terms of, let's say it's a 50-50 market, a payout of 2.0 is virtually exactly 2.0 because the blockchain fees are going to be so cheap. And there's no one like myself saying, oh yeah, I'm X website company, I'll run this decentralized blockchain solution because it's then not decentralized, right? There's no one doing that. So all of the money is going to the traders partaking. So this is really a game of poker or a game of trading between traders. Now, you can imagine here that you have these contracts, which are like NFTs in a way, right? You can trade these amongst each other during the fact and before the fact. They'll have no value after the fact, right? After the contract expires, it's then worthless. But the idea here is to provide a platform to allow these traders to do that. So that's really part 1 of this video, which is explaining the application that we're looking to develop here. Now let's talk about the tech stack. Because there's a few things we need here, right? We want a blockchain to do the back end for us. And because we've already decided the JavaScript front end to access that blockchain will be stored here, that anyone can access it, can never be taken down, right? But we need a back end. We need somewhere to store the data, store the smart contracts that actually will be responsible for making sure that what ends up happening actually happens. That will communicate with, say, Chainlink or whatever the data provider is going to be for the pricing, whatever the people are actually going to trade. It doesn't even have to be Solana, by the way. They could be trading block times or whatever, transaction counts, whatever it is that traders want to trade. They could trade that. But you need a back end for that. And there's a few things, right? You want it to be extraordinarily cheap, right? The reason you wouldn't want to use Bitcoin for this is your trading costs, or Ethereum, your trading fees are going to be monumental, right? They're too high. You want to use something that has an enormously high transaction throughput with very low trading costs. So the first thing you might consider would be maybe Solana, which before I learned about Sui was the application I was building this with, right? This is Solana's actually fantastic. I know a lot of people are very bearish on Solana because they're talking about price action. But from a developer perspective, Solana is kind of cool. The problem with it is, for me, it takes a long time to learn things. Like I have to understand them at the ground root. So I spend hours and hours and hours learning things. What I like about Solana is it uses Rust. And Rust is very robust. No rhyming intended. Rust is very robust. And it made a lot of sense in their choice to use Rust. You know, when I look at Anatoly talk, etc., and I read through Solana documentation and I program with Solana, it's extraordinarily robust, and it has had network downtimes, but I actually see that as an advantage because Solana are not fully in mainnet yet. They're calling it mainnet beta, i.e., it's like a test net, but they are learning from all these downtimes, right, in the network, etc., and they are pushing the limits of what tech can do. So they're enormously advanced. The problem with it is it's actually very tricky to get your head around how it works. And, it took me to the point where I was actually drawing up these flow diagrams, which I'm happy to take you through if you want me to in any future videos, of how this stuff actually works. Like, I know how to use Anchor. Like, I've gone through the Udemy courses that are existing on that, but I found it didn't help me. Like, I need to understand what are all the Lego bricks I can use and how can I use them so that I can best build an application. And so I spent literally a whole week again going through documentation on Solana, and I figured it out. And now I get it, and I think it's great. It's fantastic, but it's very cumbersome to build on Solana, right? There's a lot involved with having to understand the bytes, etc. And it's almost like, for me, because I'm not super tech savvy, I'm not some expert developer, it's like it's built by expert developers for expert developers. And the problem I had with it is when it came to the point of I want to view the smart contracts known as programs on Solana, I want to actually view the source code, right? I want to understand what makes up the smart contract. It's almost like we have a bunch of black box applications being built on Solana that people will just trust. And there's a double-edged sword to that, because if there are any vulnerabilities in the smart contracts out there, probably people, unless they're extremely savvy in decompiling bytecode, like aren't able to see them or know about them, and it's not worth the time and effort. So even if there are smart contract vulnerabilities, probably people won't find them. But if those vulnerabilities are created by a malicious programmer who built the application, who does know about them, that's a different story. And so the problem I'm finding is there's a natural lack of transparency, even with Ethereum, right? You have Etherscan. Etherscan is not decentralized, it's centralized. It's a centralized program where people are able to submit, and it's great that it exists. Solana needs something like that. People can submit their source code and it can be verified, etc. Right? That's fantastic. But then there's Sui. And I'm not saying Sui have exactly solved that problem, but in a way they kind of have, by the very nature of how Sui's built, right? And so I'm still sort of pinging and ponging I've got a question that's been answered in the Discord for Sui around transparency. But look at the way Sui's built, right? Sui also uses Rust, except it's not Rust. It's a language built on Rust called Move. Now, at first, someone like me would go, I'm not learning yet another language for some clever ass developer who wants that language to use their special blockchain. Except it's not like that with Sui. Move practically is Rust. If you know Rust, if you know any Rust, then you know how to use Move. Like, you can spend an hour on the Move documentation here on GitHub if you are a blockchain developer, and you can learn Move. And you're like, oh, this is just Rust with some special keywords using structs. Like, it's really freaking straightforward and pretty cool, actually, and very fast. So learning Move was not a problem at all. And actually, it makes a lot of sense. Let me show you this here. It doesn't matter if you're not a programmer. There's words like balance and coin and publish balance, and the way the language is set out with owner and Like you can see how easy it is to structure not only data, but smart contracts. These are called like move packages in a way that's very easy to understand and to work with, right? Solana is not so much like that. Solana, it's kind of the same in a way. Like the structure of Solana in many ways is not very dissimilar from a programmer's perspective. The way the blockchain works on Solana is very different to Sui. But, it's very similar, but it's not. Like you have to really be thinking in terms of bytecode and like it's much more hardcore. I love problem solving as a techie person when you're using Solana. But with Sui, I feel like somebody coming from Ethereum, for example, could learn this. And it would be good for them because in a way they'd be learning Rust. And that would really help them in the future with any, Rust is just going to increase in demand from my perspective. It's very robust. It's very fast. It's perfect for blockchain. So it's worth a developer's time learning Sui. And it really only took me a couple days going through the documentation of Sui, whereas it took me a week plus some with Solana to figure out what was going on. I also love the responsiveness in the Discord with Sui. I love the upbeat energy in there. Sui for me feels like it's going places. Now, this might be interesting to you because you might be an investor and you're like, holy shit, where can I buy this token? Well, you can't right now. If I could buy Sui right now, I would have done. Plus, by the way, if I was investing right now in crypto, if I was putting my money into crypto right now, which I'm not, by the way, I'm actually moving house at the moment. But if I was putting more money right now into crypto, I would be buying Solana and Sui if I could buy Sui, which I can't. Because from a developer's perspective, these are very impressive technologies. And I don't see why I would build for solutions using Ethereum right now. I just don't. Or Binance Smart Chain, etc. Because there's all sorts of reasons why I think both of these technologies, as Solana's already proven it can, will kick the backside of those other tech stacks. The idea here is we would have a application, you could have a trading application that is vastly scalable, right? And you can gamify it. So Sui have approached their blockchain from a concept, a way to think about it in terms of objects. So if you want to understand the Sui blockchain and how that sort of is structured, they have a really good image here on their GitHub for Move, which is the programming language that they use. That looks like this, right? You have your addresses, and your addresses, your accounts basically, can own data and own the programs for that data, which what we'll call our smart contracts. We'll call them smart contracts. In Solana, they call them programs. In Sui, I think they call them move packages. But I'm just going to call them smart contracts so everyone knows what the heck I'm talking about. So you could be this account here, and you can own this data, and you can own this smart contract over here separately. The data is stored separately from the smart contract. Solana is the same. The data is stored separately from the smart contract. Solana is exactly the same. Not exactly the same structure like this, but same concept. Solana, you have programs, right, which are smart contracts, which are these green boxes, and accounts, which are these orange boxes, etc. And programs are in fact also accounts. It's just they're just marked up differently, so they can be run differently, and they have certain permissions, blah, blah, blah. Going back to this, Solana and Sui are very similar in that they've said, no. You don't want to do it like Ethereum, where you have one smart contract and everything's in that smart contract. That's what looks like this, right? Here's your Ethereum blockchain structure. What's much more scalable, but yet also offers advantages, is to have this kind of structure. And when you look at Sui's sort of communication and marketing, they're talking much more about gaming and finance. And that really got me at first. I thought, why are you doing that? Like, why are you trying to be all things? And then I realized, because they're trying to communicate something that's difficult to communicate. The fact is that you can gamify finance. I don't know if that's what they're trying to say, but that's what I figured out you can do. And probably they're trying to say that too. For example, let's take gaming, right? Let's say that with Sui, you have a game with a sword. And that sword has properties, right? It can cut your enemy and take away 50 health points in one go and shoot freaking lasers out of it, whatever, right? You have the sword and it's got all these properties, right? So you can have the sword with all the properties stored here, right? Here's your sword. What the sword does and how you interact with it from a smart contract point of view is here. For example, I could say that this sword can be made available to any game, meaning that the properties of that sword are in an object that can be transferred and read by any game built that accesses that blockchain. Any game. So if you're in Fortnite, you could have a version of that sword with those properties which have just transferred over. Like it's really straightforward the way they've done it, but not straightforward to have thought about the way they've done it, right? So it makes sense. You've got these objects. Technically, you could do the same thing with Solana. Technically speaking, you could. It's just with the way it's built, in the language it's built in with Sui, it's very easy to think about it and code it to get from idea to execution. And it's very intuitive from that perspective. And so that's why I'm very big on using Suis, because I know I could build an application that allows traders to move and manage contracts. It doesn't just have to be on the platform I build. Some other Joe could build another platform and say, cool, we'll let you also access the objects, that are also accessed by this other platform. And so you can trade contracts in different areas. It's not just limited to what I build. As long as in what I'm developing here in the programs or the packages, it's allowing permissions that would need to be, allowed to enable you to do all of this. As long as it's built with that in mind, it sort of blows your mind, because what you realize is we're limited just by what we build, and therefore by our ideas. And therefore, if you can go from idea to execution quickly and then show many people how to do the same, you end up with these applications that can become their own decentralized animals and run extremely quickly, and you don't have to fund any of it. So for example, Sui, with the idea of using Sui, this blockchain should be extremely fast, like handling hundreds of thousands, 120,000 transactions a second, for example. Not that that might be needed. And they're doing that because they're also separating what type of transactions will be handled in a certain way. So straightforward transfer will be handled differently. It will not happen through your traditional type of consensus in the way other blockchains do, versus where they'll use like a DAG type system, which is like a directed acyclic graph. Basically, it's like an alternative to a blockchain structure for a different type of solution. So what they're saying is, no, use the right type of consensus for the right type of transaction. And actually they're scaling that way as well. So actually it begins to make a lot of sense. And what I would like is, I would like this vision to become a reality. Number one is the first building block. So can me as a solo developer go and build something like this within, say, a 2-month time frame as a side project, and that actually has legs? And it can be then used and integrated into other people's applications without me even needing to do anything. Like it's already pre-built for you to be able to do that. And that's the vision here, right? That's why I'm considering using the Sui blockchain. So I've not met these people. I've not met these people. I love what they're doing. I think Solana is fantastic. I don't care about what I've read in the media, etc. I think, we've got really smart people pushing barriers. But I wanted to give the community here, the wizards and yourself, a view from a developer's perspective in this market, because ultimately the cryptos that are going to win are going to be the cryptos that we're using over the long term. And I understand, about price speculation and all of that. I have done well, as have many people, investing and trading in crypto in the past, and also lost money in the past, right? I do think that for me personally, not for you, these are tokens that have, significant value long term, that have sustainable growth long term potentially. I'm not saying go out and buy Solana, and if Sui was available, I'm not saying go and buy it. I'm saying for me personally, if I were to be investing right now, which I'm not, I would be buying these two. Because from a developer, I've looked at all other options that I've been aware of, and these are the only two that existed that would help someone like me build applications that someone like potentially you and I can use, That's the point I'm trying to make here. Let's get away from the noise and actually look at what is being provided to us that we're missing a trick on. I hope you found this useful and interesting. Feel free to disagree in the comments and give your opposing or agreement over there. I'm interested to hear back from you. Till the next one, take care. Talk soon.